It was a quiet evening in the city, and the office building stood tall and bright against the night sky. Inside, the long day had finally ended. The employees had gone home, the lights on most floors were off, and only the hum of the security cameras filled the air. Down in the lobby sat the night guard, a man named Aaron. He wore a simple blue uniform and kept his cap neatly on his desk. Every hour, he walked around the building, checking doors, turning off forgotten lights, and making sure everything was safe. Aaron was a man of few words. To most people, he was just another guard, someone who nodded politely when they entered, held the door open when they left, and never complained about long shifts. But behind his calm eyes, there lived a quiet world of dreams. Aaron had once dreamed of something very different. He loved music, especially the sound of the keyboard. The way the notes could express emotions words couldn't always describe had always fascinated him. Years ago, when he was younger, Aaron used to play at small gatherings. He had saved for months to buy a second-hand keyboard from a local shop. It wasn't fancy, but to him it was priceless. Every night after his day job, he would sit by the window, close his eyes, and let his fingers tell their own stories through the keys. But life doesn't always let dreams grow easily. When his father got sick, Aaron had to stop everything and take care of his family. Music took a back seat, and work became his only focus. Now working as a security guard, he often found himself thinking about those old days. Sometimes when the building was empty and silent, he would hum softly under his breath. The melody would echo faintly through the hallways. No one ever noticed, or at least that's what he thought. One night, as he was finishing his round, Aaron passed by the large meeting hall. The company had been preparing for a big annual celebration. He could see decorations stacked in boxes, banners waiting to be hung, and chairs arranged neatly in rows. In the corner, he noticed something that caught his attention: a shiny electronic keyboard sitting on a stand. It looked so perfect, like it was waiting to be played. He stopped for a moment and just stared at it. His heart started to beat a little faster. He looked around. The building was completely empty. His hands itched to touch the keys just once, just to feel the smooth surface beneath his fingers again. But he quickly shook his head and walked away. It wasn't his place. He was just the guard. That thought always stopped him. A few days later, during his shift, Aaron overheard two employees talking as they left. They were discussing the upcoming event. The company's boss, a man known for being strict but fair, had planned something grand this year. There would be food, decorations, and even live music. The boss had hired a professional band to perform. Aaron smiled quietly. He liked the idea of music filling the building. It reminded him of a life he had almost forgotten. The next evening, while the band came for rehearsal, Aaron sat at his desk and listened from afar. The sound of the drums, guitar, and keyboard filled the air. The keyboard especially caught his attention. Every note touched something deep inside him. He closed his eyes and let himself get lost in the rhythm. For those few minutes, he wasn't a guard anymore. He was a musician again. But then laughter snapped him back to reality. A group of office workers were standing nearby, watching the rehearsal. One of them joked, "Imagine if someone from the office tried to play." Another laughed and said, "If our guard tried, the boss would fire him before he even hit the first note." They all laughed and walked away. Aaron pretended not to hear, but their words stayed with him. He knew they didn't mean harm, but it still hurt. People often thought of him only as a man in uniform, not as a person with dreams. Later that night, when everyone left and silence returned, Aaron went back to his usual duties. But his eyes kept drifting toward the keyboard in the hall. He knew he shouldn't, but the temptation was too strong. He slowly stepped closer. The lights above the stage were dim, and the room felt almost magical. He reached out and gently pressed one key. The sound echoed softly. Then another key. Then another. Before he knew it, his hands began to move on their own, finding melodies he thought he had long forgotten. The tune was soft and emotional. It told a story of lost dreams, of hope, of quiet nights spent wishing for something more. In that empty hall, Aaron played not for fame, not for money, but for himself. For the first time in years, he felt alive again. His eyes closed and his heart spoke through every note. Unbeknownst to him, someone was still there. One of the cleaning staff had returned to pick up her forgotten bag. She froze when she heard the music. Slowly, she peeked through the door and saw Aaron sitting at the keyboard, playing with such grace that it didn't seem real. The melody was full of emotion. as if each note carried a piece of his soul. She didn't want to interrupt, so she just listened quietly, her eyes wide in amazement. When Aaron finally stopped, he sighed deeply and smiled to himself. He didn't notice the cleaner until she clapped softly from the doorway. Embarrassed, he stood up quickly. "I'm sorry," he said. "I shouldn't have touched it." But she shook her head and smiled. "That was beautiful," she said. "You play like someone who was born for music." Aaron's cheeks turned red. "Thank you," he said softly. "But it's been a long time, I just missed it." She smiled warmly and said, "You shouldn't hide it. People need to hear that kind of music." Then she quietly left the room. Aaron stood there for a moment, unsure what to feel. He didn't know that she had recorded a short video of him playing, not out of mockery, but because she truly wanted others to hear what she had just witnessed. The next morning, the office was buzzing. The video had spread through the employee chat group. People were shocked to see the quiet night guard playing like a professional. Some thought it was edited. Others couldn't believe it was real. "That can't be him," one said. "He's just a security guard." But others defended him, saying that talent can come from anywhere. By the afternoon, the video reached the boss himself. He watched it with a raised eyebrow. "Our guard," he said with a laugh. "This must be a joke." His assistant tried to tell him it was real, but the boss shook his head. "If he can really play like that, I'll give him the stage myself. If not, he's out." Everyone laughed, thinking it would never happen. That night, when Aaron arrived for work, he noticed people looking at him differently. Some smiled, some whispered, and a few even gave him a thumbs up. He didn't understand why until the cleaning lady told him about the video. His heart skipped a beat. "You recorded me?" he asked, not angry but surprised. She nodded. "Everyone knows now." They were amazed. Even the boss saw it. Aaron didn't know what to say. He felt a mix of fear and embarrassment. "What if I lose my job?" he asked quietly. The cleaning lady shook her head. "Don't worry. Just be yourself. They'll see who you really are." That night, as he sat at his desk, Aaron couldn't stop thinking. Maybe this was fate. Maybe this was his second chance to show the world what he had hidden for so long. The sound of his own music still echoed in his mind, reminding him that passion never truly dies. It only waits for the right moment to return. Outside, the city lights shimmered. Inside, a man who had been forgotten by his own dreams was quietly preparing to rediscover them. He didn't know what awaited him next, but for the first time in years, he felt a spark of hope. The next morning, the office was alive with whispers. People huddled near coffee machines, sharing the same short clip on their phones. Some replayed it over and over, surprised that the man they passed by every day at the front desk could play music so beautifully. Others laughed softly, saying it couldn't be real. They called it a trick of the camera or maybe an internet prank. But those who had seen the raw emotion in the video knew the truth. It was no trick. Aaron arrived at work as usual, his uniform freshly pressed, his badge shining under the lobby lights. He nodded politely at everyone, unaware of how many eyes followed him. Some smiled, some whispered, and others just looked at him with a mix of curiosity and respect. When he finally noticed a few phones pointing in his direction, he realized something was different. The cleaner who had recorded the video walked over, smiling nervously. She said softly, "They all saw it. Everyone knows now." Aaron blinked in surprise. "Knows what?" he asked. She handed him her phone. On the screen was his own face, sitting at the keyboard, lost in music. His heart stopped for a moment. He hadn't meant for anyone to see that. The video had thousands of views already on the office group chat and was spreading beyond it. For a second, he didn't know how to feel. Embarrassment, fear, and pride all mixed inside him. He looked around, half expecting the boss to appear and shout at him. But instead, one of the younger employees approached and said, "Sir, that was amazing. I didn't know you could play like that." Aaron smiled shyly, unsure how to respond. It felt strange being called sir. Throughout the day, the office buzzed about it. In meeting rooms, in hallways, in the cafeteria, everyone was talking about the security guard with the magical touch. Some said he must have learned professionally. Others guessed he had once been a musician. But nobody really knew his story. In the middle of the day, the boss, Mr. Kapoor, finally heard all the noise. Sitting in his large glass office, he frowned and asked his assistant, "What is this nonsense everyone is talking about?" The assistant smiled nervously. "It's about our night guard, sir. People say he can play the keyboard very well. Someone recorded him last night, Mr. Kapoor chuckled. Our guard? Playing like a professional? You must be joking. He waved his hand dismissively. The assistant showed him the video on his tablet. Mr. Kapoor leaned forward, curiosity growing. As the melody filled the room, his smile faded. The music wasn't ordinary. It had emotion, skill, and soul. He watched silently until the end. Then he leaned back in his chair, surprised. That's really him? He asked quietly. Yes, sir, the assistant said. It was recorded here in our hall after the band left last night. The boss thought for a moment and then laughed again, this time louder. Fine, if he's that good, let's put him to the test. Call him in during rehearsal tonight. I want to see it with my own eyes. The assistant hesitated, unsure if the boss was serious, but one look told him not to argue. That evening, when Aaron came for his shift, one of the staff members approached him. Sir, the boss wants to see you in the hall during the band's practice. Aaron froze. His mind went blank. Me, why? He asked softly. The staff member shrugged. He saw your video. I think he wants you to play. Aaron felt his hands tremble. Play in front of everyone? And the boss? He wanted to say no, but before he could, the sound of laughter came from inside the hall. Mr. Kapoor stood there, smiling broadly, surrounded by the band members. Our famous musician has arrived, he said playfully. Everyone turned to look at Aaron. Some smiled kindly, others watched curiously. Come in, guard, the boss said, motioning him forward. Aaron stepped inside slowly. The lights were bright, the instruments neatly arranged. He could smell the faint scent of coffee and cables. His uniform suddenly felt too tight. Mr. Kapoor looked at him and said, You know, if you play well, you can join the celebration performance. If not, well, we can't have people using company equipment for fun. Fair? The word stung a little. Aaron nodded respectfully. Yes, sir. The boss gestured to the keyboard. Go ahead. Show us. For a moment, Arun just stood there staring at the instrument. He could feel everyone's eyes on him. The band, the office workers, and the boss himself. He took a deep breath and walked toward the keyboard. His hands hovered above the keys, trembling slightly. Memories flashed in his mind. His old room, the broken keyboard he had fixed again and again, his father smiling as he played a tune, the nights spent dreaming of being on a stage. Then he closed his eyes. The first note was soft, uncertain, like a whisper. But then slowly his fingers began to move with confidence. The music filled the hall, a gentle, flowing melody that seemed to come from somewhere deep within his heart. Every note carried emotion, every pause had meaning. The band members stopped talking. Even Mr. Kapoor, who had been smiling sarcastically, now watched in silence. Aaron forgot where he was. He forgot about his uniform, his job, his worries. In that moment, there was only music. It rose and fell like a story, telling of struggle, love, and hope. When the final note faded into silence, no one moved for a few seconds. Then came the applause, slow at first, then louder and louder. Some even stood up, clapping and cheering. The hall that had once felt cold was now filled with warmth. Aaron opened his eyes, surprised by the reaction. He looked at the boss, unsure what to expect. Mr. Kapoor stood there, arms crossed, but there was something new in his eyes. Respect. He nodded slowly and said, You have real talent, Aaron. Why didn't you tell anyone? Aaron smiled gently. It never seemed important, sir. I just play for peace. The boss walked closer and said, Peace like that should be shared. We need this kind of heart in our event. The band can take a break. You're playing the opening piece. Aaron was speechless. The band members smiled and congratulated him. One of them even said, You play better than most of us. For the first time in years, Aaron felt seen, not as a guard, but as a person, an artist. As he left the hall that night, the same corridors that had always felt ordinary now seemed different. People nodded at him, patted his shoulder, and smiled. He walked back to his post, his heart light, but later, as he sat alone in the lobby, he began to worry. What if the boss had only been kind for show? What if this attention didn't last? The world he knew often forgot easily. Still, deep down, he felt grateful. Even if it was only for one evening, his music had been heard. The next day, the office atmosphere was different. The video of his live performance had spread even further. The company's social media team posted a short clip from the rehearsal, and it quickly gained attention. Comments poured in, people amazed that a security guard could play like a professional. Some wrote about how inspiring it was, Others shared how it reminded them to follow their own dreams. Arun became an unintentional symbol of hidden talent. Mr. Kapoor noticed the response too. During a meeting, he smiled slightly and said, "Sometimes talent hides in the most unexpected places. Maybe we all need to look closer." For once, everyone agreed. That evening, when Arun arrived for work, he found a small note on his desk. It was from the boss. It read, "Thank you for reminding us what passion looks like. Let's make something special together." Underneath the note was a small badge with his name engraved on it. But this time, it didn't say security, it said music coordinator. Arun stared at it for a long moment, hardly believing what he saw. His hands trembled again, but this time not from fear, from joy. He realized that his life was changing in ways he never imagined. All because he had dared to touch a keyboard one quiet night when no one was watching. As he looked out at the city lights through the glass door, he whispered to himself, "Maybe dreams don't die. Maybe they just wait for us to find them again." The company event was just a few days away, and excitement filled every corner of the office. Workers who once ignored the quiet night guard now stopped to greet him with smiles. Some even asked for small tunes when they passed by the security desk. Arun would just smile politely and nod, still not used to the sudden attention. It felt strange. For years he had lived in the background, unseen, unnoticed, and now everyone seemed to know his name. Every night after his shift started, he practiced in the main hall. The boss had given him permission to use the keyboard whenever the band wasn't rehearsing. Arun would sit there under the soft lights, alone with the instrument, losing himself in the music. Each melody he played carried a piece of his heart, his childhood memories, his struggles, and the silent dreams he had buried for so long. It wasn't about perfection, it was about emotion. And that's what made his music special. One night as he practiced, a young employee named Ria entered quietly. She stood at the door listening. When he finished, she clapped softly and said, "Sir, you don't just play notes, you make people feel." Arun smiled gently. "Music is like that. It speaks when words can't." She nodded. "You're going to be the highlight of the event. Everyone's waiting to hear you." Arun's smile faded slightly. "I'm not sure about that." The boss could still change his mind. Ria shook her head confidently. "Not after what he saw. You've earned this." Her words gave him courage. For the first time in years, he began to believe in himself again. The next morning, the office was buzzing with preparations. Banners were hung, tables arranged, and lights tested. The event was going to be big. Arun watched from his desk, quietly admiring the hard work of the team. When the boss passed by, he stopped for a moment and said, "I heard you've been practicing every night." Arun stood up straight and nodded. "Yes, sir." Mr. Kapoor gave a small smile. "Good, keep it that way. We want the evening to start strong." It wasn't a long conversation, but for Arun it meant everything. It was the first time the boss had spoken to him not as a guard, but as someone important to the event. That night, when Arun went home, his little apartment felt brighter than usual. He sat by his window, took out his old keyboard, the one with missing keys and faded paint, and played a soft tune. The sound wasn't perfect, but it was full of feeling. His neighbor, an elderly man, leaned out of his window and said, "You're playing again, son. It's been years." Arun smiled and said, "Yes. Maybe life is giving me another chance." Days passed quickly. Finally, the day of the company's annual celebration arrived. The building was decorated beautifully with fairy lights, banners, and flowers. The employees were dressed in their best clothes. The air was filled with laughter, the sound of clinking cups, and music from the band as they tuned their instruments. Arun, dressed neatly in a new uniform, stood near the stage with a mix of pride and nervousness. When the boss arrived, the crowd cheered. He went up on stage, gave a short welcome speech, and thanked everyone for their hard work. Then he said, "Tonight we have something special. A reminder that talent can come from anywhere. Let's welcome someone who has shown us that dreams never truly fade." He looked toward Arun and gestured for him to come forward. The applause grew louder as Arun stepped onto the stage. He could feel his heart pounding in his chest. For a moment, he just stood there, looking out at all the faces, the people he had greeted at the door every morning, the ones who had once walked past him without a glance, and now they were all cheering for him. He took a deep breath and sat down at the keyboard. The lights dimmed and silence filled the hall. Arun placed his fingers on the keys and began to play. The first notes were gentle, like a whisper, slowly building into a melody that filled the room with warmth. His music spoke of simple joys, of love, of quiet nights and unspoken dreams. Some people closed their eyes, swaying slightly. Others watched in amazement. Even the boss, standing near the side of the stage, looked moved. As the song continued, a few people began recording it on their phones. The camera lights blinked like little stars in the dark room. Aaron didn't notice them. He was lost in his own world, each note flowing from his soul. When he finally finished, the crowd erupted in applause. Some even stood, clapping loudly. A few had tears in their eyes. Mr. Kapoor walked onto the stage, smiling widely. He placed a hand on Aaron's shoulder and said into the microphone, "That was not just music. That was heart. Thank you for reminding us that passion doesn't depend on titles or positions." The audience cheered again. Aaron stood there overwhelmed. He had never imagined this moment in his life. It felt unreal. After the performance, everyone wanted to talk to him. People who had never spoken to him before now wanted to know his story. Some thanked him for inspiring them. One employee said, "I gave up painting years ago because of work. After seeing you, I'm going to start again." Arun smiled. He didn't know what to say. He had only played because it made him happy, but somehow it had touched others too. Later that night, as the event came to an end, the boss called Aaron into his office. The room was quiet except for the faint sound of music still playing in the hall. Mr. Kapoor looked at him and said, "You know, I didn't believe it at first. When they showed me that video, I laughed. I thought it was a joke, but now I understand. You have something rare, Aaron. You have passion." Aaron lowered his head humbly. "Thank you, sir. I never thought anyone would notice." The boss leaned back in his chair. "You know, I used to love painting when I was young, but I stopped because I thought business was more important. Watching you tonight made me realize I lost something along the way." He smiled slightly. "Maybe we both got a reminder tonight." Aaron nodded softly. "Sometimes life hides our dreams until we're ready to find them again." The boss stood up and extended his hand. "I'm glad we found yours. From now on, I want you to handle the cultural activities here. You'll still oversee security, but you'll also plan our events, coordinate performances, and maybe even teach others." Arun's eyes widened. "Me, sir?" Mr. Kapoor nodded. "Yes, you. You've earned it." For a moment, Arun couldn't speak. His eyes watered slightly, but he quickly blinked it away. "Thank you, sir," he said quietly. "I'll do my best." The boss smiled warmly. "I know you will." As Arun left the office, he looked around the building that had once felt cold and distant. Tonight it felt different. It felt alive. People were still chatting, laughing, and playing music in the background. He walked to his desk, sat down, and took a deep breath. Everything felt unreal. Just a week ago he was invisible. Now he was part of something bigger. When the clock struck midnight and the hall finally went quiet, Aaron walked back to the stage. The lights were dim now, and the decorations shimmered softly. He sat down at the keyboard again and played one last song, just for himself. It was slow and gentle, filled with gratitude. The notes floated through the empty hall like a promise to never let go of his music again. He didn't know what the future held. Maybe more performances, maybe new challenges. But one thing was certain, he had found his place again. Not because someone gave it to him, but because he had the courage to be himself. As he finished the final note, he looked out into the quiet hall and whispered to himself, "Dreams don't disappear. They wait for us to listen again." Then he stood up, turned off the lights, and walked out with a peaceful smile on his face. The night outside was cool, the city lights twinkling like stars, and for the first time in a long while, Aaron felt truly alive. The days after the event were full of new challenges and surprises for Aaron. The office that had once seemed ordinary now felt like a stage, and everyone treated him differently. He was no longer just a security guard. He had become a symbol of hidden talent, and people looked at him with respect and curiosity. Some came to him to ask questions about music, while others simply wanted to share how his performance had inspired them. Aaron listened quietly, his heart full but still grounded in humility. He never sought attention, he just loved music. One morning, as he arrived for his shift, he noticed a small group gathered near the reception. They waved at him eagerly. Among them was Ria, the young employee who had once encouraged him to keep playing. "Good morning, sir," she said, smiling brightly. "I just wanted to tell you again how amazing you were." People are still talking about your performance. Even clients asked about it today. Aaron nodded politely, feeling a warmth he hadn't felt in years. It was strange to be admired, yet he welcomed it. The boss, Mr. Kapoor, called Arun into his office later that day. He handed him a folder. Here are the plans for the next few events. I want you to be in charge of the musical arrangements and performances. Arun's eyes widened. Me, sir? But I'm still a security guard. The boss shook his head with a small smile. You're more than that now. We need someone with passion. Someone who can make people feel the music. I know you can do it. Arun nodded silently, overwhelmed by the responsibility. This was more than he had ever dreamed of. He spent the next few days preparing. He met with the band, discussed song choices, and even suggested a few of his own compositions. The musicians were amazed at his knowledge and ideas. Arun wasn't just playing. He was guiding the event, shaping it with his creativity. For him, it was a chance to give back the joy that music had always brought him. Every rehearsal was filled with laughter, corrections, and moments of pure magic. He began to realize that being part of this wasn't just about performing. It was about creating something meaningful with others. One evening, as the office emptied and Arun remained alone in the hall, he started to play a melody he had composed the night after the big event. The notes floated softly, echoing through the empty space. He closed his eyes and remembered the journey that had brought him here. The night spent in silence, the fear of showing his talent, and the small moments of encouragement that had kept him going. The music felt like a conversation with his past self, a reminder of everything he had overcome. Suddenly, he heard footsteps approaching. He looked up and saw the boss standing quietly in the doorway, listening. Arun stopped and smiled nervously. Sir, I didn't know anyone was here. Mr. Kapoor shook his head. I didn't want to interrupt. I just wanted to hear you play. There's something special in the way you create music. It's not just talent, it's heart. Aaron felt a lump in his throat. Thank you, sir. That means a lot. The boss nodded and left quietly, leaving Arun alone with the music once again. Over the next few weeks, Arun's life became busier, but also more fulfilling. He balanced his security duties with his new role, coordinating rehearsals, arranging performances, and mentoring young employees who had hidden talents of their own. He discovered that the office was filled with people who had dreams they had abandoned. Some wrote, some painted, some sang. Arun encouraged them to share their skills, organizing small sessions during lunch breaks and after hours. The office that had once been just a workplace became a place of creativity and expression. One afternoon, while Aaron was helping a colleague fine-tune a piano piece, he received a message from the company's social media team. The video of his original performance had gone viral outside the office. Messages poured in from people all over the city, praising his skill, sharing their own stories of forgotten dreams, and thanking him for reminding them to keep hope alive. Aaron sat quietly reading each comment. He never imagined that his simple act of playing would touch so many lives. The boss called a special meeting that evening. He looked around the room at all the employees who had been inspired by Arun. I wanted to bring everyone together to say something important, he said. Arun has reminded us that passion doesn't have a job title. Talent can be found in the most unexpected places. We all need to remember that. There were nods and murmurs of agreement. Arun, sitting quietly at the edge of the room, felt a wave of gratitude. He had never sought recognition, but he appreciated it nonetheless. That night, after the office emptied, Arun went to the hall once more. He sat at the keyboard and began to play. This time he played a piece that told a story, his story. The music spoke of dreams lost and found, of fear and courage, of quiet nights filled with hope. As the notes filled the room, he felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. For the first time, he realized that he had not only rediscovered his passion, but also created a space for others to find theirs. As he finished, he heard soft applause from the doorway. He turned to see Ria standing there smiling. That was beautiful, sir. Every note had meaning. Aaron smiled back, feeling a warmth spread through him. Thank you. Music has a way of telling what words cannot. She nodded, clearly moved. You've given us more than music. You've given us hope. In the following days, Aaron continued to balance his duties and his new responsibilities. He organized workshops, guided performances, and even helped set up a small stage in the lobby where employees could showcase their talents. The office had transformed. What was once just a workplace had become a community where people felt safe to express themselves. Aaron had not only found his place but had also inspired others to find theirs. The boss watched all of this quietly. He noticed how Aaron's presence had changed the atmosphere, how the employees were more engaged, more creative, and happier. One afternoon, he called Aaron into his office again. "You've done more than I expected," he said. "I thought you would just perform, but you've built something bigger. You've reminded all of us what passion looks like." Aaron felt a sense of pride tempered with humility. "I'm just doing what I love, sir. If it helps others, that's even better." As the weeks went by, Aaron's story spread beyond the office. Local news outlets wrote articles, social media shared clips of his performances, and even small music schools reached out to him for advice. Aaron never sought fame, but he realized that sharing his passion had created a ripple effect, touching more lives than he had ever imagined. One evening, as Aaron sat alone at the keyboard after another successful rehearsal, he thought back to the nights he had spent playing in silence, feeling invisible. Now everything had changed. He had not only found his own voice but had given others the courage to find theirs. The office was alive with music, creativity, and dreams, and he was at the heart of it all. Looking out at the city lights through the tall glass windows, Aaron whispered to himself, "Life has a way of giving second chances. You just have to be ready to take them." He pressed a key softly, letting the sound linger in the air, and smiled. This was just the beginning of a journey that he never thought he would have, and for the first time he felt truly at home, not just in the office but in life itself. The weeks after Aaron's performance were filled with new experiences and responsibilities. He had become a part of something bigger than himself, and he felt a sense of purpose that he had never known before. The office had transformed from a place of routine work into a lively, creative space. Music flowed from the hallways, and employees were no longer just colleagues. They were collaborators, dreamers, and supporters of one another's talents. Aaron's days were now a delicate balance. He still carried out his security duties, making rounds and ensuring the safety of the building. But he also spent hours coordinating music sessions, rehearsing with performers, and mentoring colleagues who wanted to share their hidden skills. It was tiring, but it was fulfilling in a way that no ordinary job could ever be. Each day ended with a quiet sense of achievement, and each night as he sat at the keyboard, he felt a connection to the music that had always been his sanctuary. One morning, he arrived to find the boss waiting near the entrance. Mr. Kapoor smiled warmly. "Aaron, the management has decided to make some changes. We want to formally include a cultural program in our company events, and you will lead it." Aaron blinked, humbled and slightly overwhelmed. "Me, sir?" The boss nodded. "Yes, we need someone who understands music, has vision, and can inspire others. You are the perfect person for this." Aaron bowed his head slightly, feeling the weight of responsibility and the honor it carried. The following days were filled with planning. Aaron met with staff members, discussed event themes, and helped select music pieces. He even created original melodies for certain parts of the program. Watching the employees' faces light up when they tried his pieces or shared their own creations was a joy, unlike anything he had experienced. He realized that music wasn't just about playing notes. It was about connecting people, helping them express what they couldn't put into words. One afternoon, while reviewing the rehearsal schedule, Arun noticed a colleague hesitating near the hall. She was holding a small flute and looked uncertain. Arun approached gently. "Would you like to play?" he asked softly. She shook her head, embarrassed. "I've never performed in front of anyone." "I'm scared." Arun smiled reassuringly. "It's okay to be scared. Everyone starts somewhere. Music isn't about being perfect. It's about expressing yourself. Try it." Slowly, she lifted the flute and played a few tentative notes. Aaron encouraged her, adjusting her fingers lightly, and soon a soft melody filled the room. She looked up, eyes shining with surprise and pride. "I never thought I could do that," she whispered. Aaron nodded. "Now you know you can." As the days passed, more employees discovered their hidden talents. A shy accountant began to sing. A receptionist tried her hand at the drums, and even some of the more senior staff members joined in. Aaron guided them patiently, blending their skills into harmonious pieces. The office had transformed into a community, a place where people felt safe to explore their creativity. Aaron felt proud, not just of his own music but of the environment he had helped nurture. One evening, after a long rehearsal, Aaron sat alone at the keyboard, reflecting on how much his life had changed. He remembered the nights when he was invisible, just a guard moving quietly through empty halls. Back then, he never imagined that playing music could lead to this. A community that valued creativity, a boss who trusted him, and colleagues who now saw him not just as a security guard, but as a mentor and a source of inspiration. As he played, a message appeared on his phone. It was from the social media team. The clip of his first live performance had been picked up by a popular local news outlet. People from outside the company were watching, commenting, and sharing. Aaron smiled quietly, realizing that his music was reaching far beyond the walls of his office. He never sought fame, but he understood now that passion, when shared, has a ripple effect. It touches lives, sometimes in ways you never expect. The boss came to see him that night, leaning against the doorway silently. Aaron stopped playing and looked up. "You play well," Mr. Kapoor said simply. Aaron smiled politely. "Thank you, sir. It's my pleasure." The boss nodded. "You've changed more than the music here. You've changed the way people see each other, the way they see themselves." That's a rare gift. Aaron felt a lump in his throat. He had never thought of it that way. "I just wanted to help people feel what music feels like," he said quietly. The boss smiled. "You've done more than that." In the weeks leading up to the next company event, Arun worked tirelessly. He coordinated schedules, rehearsed pieces, and ensured everyone felt confident. He even composed a new piece specifically for the opening of the event. It was a melody filled with hope, joy, and a sense of new beginnings. As he practiced it in the hall one night, he noticed a few employees lingering outside, listening quietly. Some had tears in their eyes. Aaron smiled softly, realizing that the music wasn't just notes on a page. It was a language of the heart. Finally, the day of the event arrived. The office was transformed with decorations, lights, and an excited audience. Employees and guests alike were buzzing with anticipation. Aaron stood backstage, heart pounding. He looked at the performers he had guided and felt a wave of pride. They were ready. He took a deep breath, remembering how far he had come, from playing in an empty hall late at night to standing on a stage with an entire office filled with listeners. The boss took the microphone first, giving a brief speech. Then he gestured toward Aaron. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome someone who has reminded us that passion can live in the most unexpected places. Aaron." The audience erupted into applause. Aaron stepped onto the stage, his hands trembling slightly but his heart steady. He sat at the keyboard and began to play the opening piece. The music flowed naturally, capturing the essence of the office community, the stories of the employees and the journey that had brought him here. Some people closed their eyes, swaying to the melody. Others watched in amazement. The boss, standing to the side, nodded in approval. Aaron played with everything he had, letting the notes carry all the gratitude, humility, and joy he felt. The performance was not about him alone. It was about everyone who had found their voice through him. When the final note echoed through the hall, the audience erupted in applause. Some stood clapping, cheering, and whistling. Aaron felt a wave of emotion. He looked out at the crowd, seeing faces bright with pride, gratitude, and inspiration. In that moment, he realized that music had done more than entertain. It had connected people, healed doubts, and sparked hope. After the event, the employees crowded around him, offering congratulations and thanks. Arun smiled, feeling a quiet sense of fulfillment. He had not only rediscovered his passion, but he had created an environment where others could rediscover theirs. The office that had once been a place of routine had become a community alive with creativity and heart. Later that night, as he returned to the quiet hall, Arun sat at the keyboard once more. He played softly, not for anyone else, but for himself. Each note was a reflection of the journey he had taken, from a quiet guard playing in empty halls to a mentor and musician inspiring others. He realized that life had given him a second chance, and he had embraced it fully. As he played, he whispered to himself, "Dreams may wait, but they never disappear. They are always ready to be found again." The weeks after the second big event were full of energy and change. Aaron had settled into his dual role smoothly, managing security while also guiding the company's cultural and musical programs. He had discovered a new rhythm in life, one that combined discipline with creativity, duty with passion. The office had become a lively hub where employees felt free to express themselves and share their talents. Aaron often smiled quietly, watching people discover abilities they had long hidden away. One morning, as Aaron started his rounds, he noticed a small group of employees gathered near the lobby. They were whispering excitedly, pointing toward him. He approached slowly, curious but cautious. Raya, the young employee who had first encouraged him, came forward with a beaming smile. "Aaron, you won't believe this. A local music school wants you to give a talk and a short performance. They saw your video and want to inspire their students." Aaron was stunned. "A talk? A performance? Me?" he asked quietly. Rhea nodded. "Yes. They said your story is inspiring and your music is beautiful. They want you to share it." Aaron paused, feeling a mixture of fear and excitement. He had never imagined performing outside the office, yet he felt a quiet pull. This was an opportunity to touch more lives. Later that evening, Aaron shared the news with Mr. Kapoor. The boss listened thoughtfully and smiled. "I think it's a wonderful opportunity. It will show the world that passion isn't limited by job titles. You've worked hard to guide our office's talent. Now you can inspire others too." Aaron felt a sense of encouragement he hadn't expected. With the boss's blessing, he accepted the invitation. Over the next few days, Aaron prepared for the music school visit. He rehearsed his pieces carefully, ensuring that his performance would convey emotion and story. But he also thought about his talk, what he would say to inspire students. He decided to focus on the idea that talent could come from anywhere, and that persistence, courage, and passion were more important than recognition or titles. On the day of the visit, Aaron walked into the music school, feeling nervous yet excited. The room was filled with students of all ages, their eyes wide with curiosity. As he set up the keyboard, he noticed the eager faces, each one carrying dreams and hopes of their own. He took a deep breath and smiled. "Hello, everyone," he said. "I want to share a story with you about following your dreams, even when it feels impossible." He spoke of his past, the years he spent as a security guard, the quiet nights playing his old keyboard, the fear of showing his talent, and the small moments of encouragement that changed his life. The students listened intently, eyes fixed on him. Aaron emphasized that talent could be found in unexpected places, and that perseverance and self-belief were key to discovering it. Then it was time for the music. Aaron sat at the keyboard and began to play. The notes were soft at first, gradually building into a rich melody that filled the room. The students were captivated. Some closed their eyes, swaying to the rhythm. Others watched with awe as Aaron's fingers moved gracefully across the keys. Each note told a story, of struggle, hope, and the joy of rediscovering one's passion. When the final note lingered in the air, the room erupted into applause. Aaron felt a wave of emotion. He had not only performed music, but had shared a part of himself. After the performance, students approached him with questions. Some wanted advice on practicing. Others asked how to overcome fear and self-doubt. Aaron answered patiently, sharing practical tips as well as encouraging words. "Remember," he said, "it's not about being the best. It's about expressing yourself and never giving up on what you love." The students left with smiles and renewed determination. Aaron felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that his journey had inspired others to pursue their own passions. Returning to the office the next day, Aaron noticed a new energy in himself. He felt more confident, not just as a performer, but as a mentor and leader. The experience reminded him that talent, when shared, can create ripples that reach far beyond what we imagine. He continued to nurture the office community, guiding employees in music and cultural programs. People were more engaged, happier, and more willing to support one another. One evening, after a long day, Aaron sat alone at the keyboard in the hall. He reflected on how much his life had changed. From a quiet guard who played in empty halls to a respected mentor and musician, his journey had been filled with unexpected twists and turns. The music he played was no longer just for himself. It was a bridge connecting people, an expression of hope, and a reminder that dreams could be realized at any stage of life. As he played, he thought about the first night he had touched the keyboard in the empty hall, how the simple act had set everything in motion. If he hadn't taken that small risk, he might still be living in silence, his talent hidden. He realized that courage, even in small moments, can open doors to unimaginable opportunities. Days turned into weeks, and Arun's influence continued to grow. Employees who once doubted their own abilities now confidently showcased their skills. A shy office assistant started composing music, a finance clerk began to sing in front of colleagues, and even senior staff discovered hidden talents. Arun guided them patiently, blending their contributions into performances that celebrated creativity, collaboration, and heart. On one afternoon, as Arun was walking through the lobby, he noticed a young janitor carrying a small guitar. The boy looked hesitant, afraid to play in front of anyone. Arun approached quietly. "Would you like to try?" he asked softly. The boy nodded nervously. Arun smiled reassuringly. "It's okay to feel nervous. Music is about feeling, not perfection." The boy strummed a few chords, his fingers trembling. Arun guided him gently, and soon a soft melody filled the hall. The boy looked up, eyes wide, and whispered, "I never thought I could do that." Arun nodded. "Now you know you can." He realized that he was helping not just employees, but anyone willing to discover their own voice. As months passed, Arun became a cornerstone of the office culture. His story and music inspired not only the staff but also visitors and clients. He gave talks at schools, mentored aspiring musicians, and performed at local events. Yet despite the growing recognition, Arun remained humble. He never sought fame. His purpose was to share the joy of music and the courage to pursue dreams. One quiet evening, Arun sat at the keyboard alone, playing a soft, reflective melody. He thought about how far he had come, from the lonely nights in the empty hall to being surrounded by people who valued creativity and passion. His life had changed completely, yet the essence of who he was remained the same, a man who loved music and believed in the power of dreams. As the last note faded into the still night, Arun whispered to himself, "Dreams may wait, but they never disappear. They only need us to have the courage to find them again." He leaned back, smiling softly, knowing that his journey was far from over. Life had given him a second chance, and he was ready to embrace every moment, sharing his music, his story, and his hope with the world. The city outside twinkled with lights, unaware of the quiet victories happening inside the office building. Arun felt at peace, connected to his music, to the people he had inspired, and to the dreams that had finally found their voice. And for the first time in his life, he truly understood that one small act of courage could change everything.